Hello, and welcome to the fifth episode of the Handmade with Heart podcast. Today, I'm interviewing Nicole from the small shop Boomerrang Designs. She fought through a sore throat to chat with me about custom orders, upgrading equipment, and sexism in the world of being a woman in woodworking. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Handmade with Heart podcast. I'm your host, Dana, and I own the small business Scrappy Stitch. Have you ever wanted to know more about some of your favorite small businesses? Follow along as I interview other creative small business owners. We'll talk about getting started, what an average day for a creator is like, tips and tricks, and of course, everything is handmade with heart. Hey, Nicole, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us how you got started?
So, my name is Nicole Kazmerzak, and I started my business in 2017 is when I officially launched my Etsy shop. Previously, I was doing projects around my house, making different signs, decor, upgrading things, and posting it on Facebook. And every once in a while, a friend would reach out to me and say, "Hey, I saw you did this. Do you think you could do something for me?" And I've always been kind of crafty. My parents always encouraged me to be artistic and make things. And when I bought my house, my dad became very involved with me and helping me because it was just me. It was me all on my own at the house. And while the house didn't need a lot of work done to it, there were things that I wanted to do. So he helped teach me how to use a saw, how to use a drill, how to sand, like all these things that when I look back on it now, I think, oh, that's so basic. But I remember the first time he let me use the drill and the first time he let me use the miter saw, all these things that I take for granted now. But back then it was like, oh my God, he's actually like letting me do this. This is so awesome. And it was such a satisfying feeling at the end of the day to be able to walk around my house and say, oh my God, I did that. Like me and my dad, we did that together. It was just incredible to see that. And so starting to post all that stuff online, people started to ask questions. And that's actually the basis of my business is custom orders. Most of my products came around because people said, hey, can you do this for me? Or I saw this somewhere, but I'd rather buy it from you if you're able to make it for me, which I absolutely love the custom orders. It keeps things interesting. I never get bored with my work, which I think is a really important thing when you're in small business.
That's awesome. I follow you on Instagram and I see all the custom orders that you do, and they are just beautiful. And I actually wanted to ask you about one big custom order that you were doing was for a local restaurant, Mountaintop Provisions. How did
Yes.
you get hooked up with them? Because I see you do stuff for them a lot.
So we have a cabin. Well, my father-in-law, husband, and brother-in-law own a cabin up in the Lock Haven area. And there is a restaurant down the road, recently purchased by a new owner. His name's Donnie. He bought it, I think, 2 or 3 years, well, probably 3 years ago now. He hosted the first craft show that I attended.
Oh.
And at the end of the day, we got to chatting and he took my business card. And next thing I knew, he reached out to me and said, hey, can you make this for me? And I think the first thing I made for them was the sign,
Mm-hmm.
which was pre having any lasers. So that sign was completely made by hand, cut all the little letters by hand, which is how everything has started for me. I've done upgrades as the business has grown, but everything was done by hand. And he has just continued to reach out and to support us. And this last big order was an order of 20 charcuterie boards. And Andy did help with that order. He did all the cutting, the routing, sanding, everything. And then I did the engraving and the final coating on the product to make it food safe.
That's so cool. They looked awesome.
Thank you.
So that's another thing I wanted to talk to you about because I know you did everything by hand and recently you've upgraded a lot of your equipment. I saw you posted work smarter, not harder. It's a big investment when you upgrade your equipment, but it's totally worth it, huh?
Yes, yes, it is. So I used to do all of my wood burning by hand. That was a big part of my business was the wood burning, which I love doing it by hand. Then 2020 happened and my Etsy shop just exploded with orders, which was a fantastic problem. But it was to the point where I was having to shut the shop down because I couldn't keep up with the orders because of the amount of time that it took to engrave everything by hand. And one of my biggest sellers at the time was stovetop covers for campers because everybody was camping in 2020.
Hmm.
So those items were all custom and they were custom measurements. So very time consuming, which I love, but I just couldn't keep up. And I finally said to Andy, I was like, look, I think I need to get something to help me, like a laser that can do some of the work for me while I work on the bigger items.
Hmm.
So I bought a little laser off Amazon. I think it was like $200 or $300. I had no idea what I was doing. And it would take hours. I mean, 8 to 10 hours for this laser to complete something. But hey, it was 8 to 10 hours that I didn't have to be doing the engraving by hand. We ended up buying a bigger laser then around the same cost, and it had the same power, same capabilities, just larger size. Well, these two lasers were absolute nightmares. They were constantly crashing. Support was in China. I thought the second laser I bought was from a company in America. It was not. The support was just, it was a nightmare and it was so frustrating. And I kept having to buy new lasers. So we were spending all this money and I felt like I was just working to buy these lasers. So in the summer of 2021, they finally both crashed at the same time. And Andy and I had a conversation and we were like, look, the business is there. We've got the established clientele. People know that we make good quality products and we do the custom orders. I was like, I think we really need to start looking into upgrading and investing in the business, which is terrifying, as you said,
Yeah.
because it's a big chunk of money and you may not get that money back.
Hmm.
So we both started looking, and Andy is my researcher. That's what I say to him. If you want to find a good deal on something, you set Andy onto it and it's full steam ahead. He started researching, I started researching, and I'm sure many people who will listen to this podcast are familiar with glow forges. So naturally, that's what I was drawn to look at. Everybody I follow on Instagram that does crafting, that's what they use. So we started looking at it, and Andy was like, well, why don't you look at some of these other lasers as well? So I did like a pro con list kind of for all these different lasers, and I researched and evaluated different materials, cost, size, customer service, and compared and contrasted all of them. Well, quickly the Glowforge went out the window and we landed on OhmTech. It was half the price of a Glowforge, double the size, and it can do just as many materials, if not more. So
Wow.
that's ultimately where we landed. Now, it wasn't plug and play like a Glowforge is, but I had a lot of help from Andy, from my father-in-law, from our good friend Jason, because you have to be able to extract the fumes out of the laser, and the laser's in the basement. So Jason works in HVAC. So he helped with all of the installation for that. And it was
Hmm.
about a 2-month process for us to get this whole thing
Wow.
up and running. Yeah, there were many tears shed, many moments of me going, oh my God, what have we done? We've made a huge mistake. I'm in over my head. And God love Andy, he kept saying to me, if anybody can do this, you can do this. And
Oh.
I'm thinking, God, sometimes he believes in me way too much. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, not only am I going to let myself down, but I'm going to let him down. And now it's up and running. And yeah, we've had a few issues here and there, like you would with any piece of equipment, but he was right.
Hmm.
And I guess I'm saying that on a podcast. My husband was right.
It's on the record.
Yeah, it's on the record. He's never going to let me live that down now, but he was right. And it has been the best thing that we could have done for the business. I
Hmm.
mean, it has just allowed me to expand and take on new orders, new products, and there's still so much more I haven't done with it that it's capable of, just because it just can do so much and I haven't had the time to do it. So
That's
it
amazing.
was, yeah, it was well worth the investment.
That's one thing I tell people when they ask me advice for sewing machines. Oh, I found a $50 sewing machine, and I say,
Mhm.
save up and buy one that's a little bit beyond your ability because you're going to outgrow that one so
Yeah.
fast. And usually they're made a little bit better too. Like you get what you pay for.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's important too, what you said, do your research on your products,
Hmm.
because if you see something on Instagram or YouTube that's really being pushed, you don't know, maybe the people who are making those videos or posts have a deal with the company.
Right.
And like you said, you found something that works better for you. And that's really important.
And for me, the customer service was key because neither of us had any experience with lasers. What I bought off of Amazon, and I had to assemble the legs. That was it. This, it came with an industrial water chiller for the CO2 tube.
Hmm.
The mirrors had to be aligned, the exhaust system had to be set up, the bed had to be leveled. I had to learn new software, all of this.
Wow.
So customer service was critical for me.
Hmm.
But the funny thing is, I actually haven't used customer service at all because I'm in a Facebook group that provides me with all the support that I need.
Hmm.
And I would have never thought a Facebook group could provide me with the kind of support that they do, but it's incredible. And there's thousands of members in this group, and you can
Hmm.
post any hour of the day, and somebody responds and you go, "Oh, that's how I fix it," you know?
Yeah.
And it was very, very helpful. And it's also comforting to see other people getting just as frustrated as you. You know, I see new people saying, "Oh my God, I can't get the mirrors aligned. This is horrible. What have I done?" And I think to myself, "Oh God, I remember that. I remember that feeling." And then I comment and say, "Don't give up. It's worth it. I promise. Just stick with it. You got it." It's definitely worth the investment. And when I was in the market shopping for it, I called the company and spoke with a sales rep, and he spent an hour with me on the phone. And he asked me, "What's your business? What products are you looking to use? Where are you going to be putting this laser?" Because some of them you can't fit through doors. So he's like, "Is it going in your garage or is it going in your basement?" And he said, "Okay, go take a tape measure, figure out the door frame size." And it all came into play on making the decision on what was right for us. And I was just blown away with the customer service from that standpoint alone.
I remember looking at the Instagram post when you bought it, and I thought, that thing is humongous. And I actually thought, I wonder where she's putting that.
Yeah,
'Cause where's it going to fit?
it's 300 pounds. It took
Oh my
4 people
gosh.
to get it in the basement.
I hope you're not moving anytime soon.
Well, every once in a while we talk about that, and I think, "Oh my God, my family's going to kill me when they
Yeah.
have to try and take this thing out. Not alone. We should just stay here so we don't have to remove the darn laser."
Yeah. So I saw on Instagram that Omtech recently featured one of your pieces for
Yes,
International Women's Day, which was on March 8th. And it was
yes.
beautiful. So tell me about how that came about.
Tech is, I guess you could say, they're just huge supporters of the small business, which makes sense because that's their bread and butter. So whenever I post on Instagram, I normally use their hashtag or I tag them in my stories. And then almost every single time without fail, they'll reshare your story. But the piece that was featured on International Women's Day was actually the second piece that they reached out to me privately and said, "Hey, we love this. Can we share it?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, no problem." I had no idea they were featuring it on International Women's Day, which for me, being a female small business owner and just some of the things that I've done in my life on my own as a woman, I was so honored. It almost brought me to tears. I was just so excited that they have featured this piece on International Women's Day. Of all the other small businesses out there,
Yeah.
they chose my piece. So the bull with the flowers and "take the bull by the horns," that's one of my favorite quotes. So I was very excited to put that piece together. And then when they actually featured it, I was just beyond thrilled.
That's amazing. I know. I was so proud of you. I have to say, I'm so proud of seeing how far your small business has come, because I remember when you started out and you were making the little beer caddies, you doing it all by hand, and like you
Yep.
said, the stovetop covers and
Yep.
everything. And now it's like every couple of days I see a totally brand new thing from you, and it's amazing how much your shop has
Thank
grown. It's
you.
really cool.
Thank you. It is exciting.
I read that you don't want to niche down.
Yes.
Tell me about that, because a lot of people will niche down, but
Yeah.
you said, no, you don't want to do that.
So, as you said, my business started out with beer caddies. To be honest with you, I dread now when somebody asks me to make a beer caddy. I will do it, But I made so many darn beer caddies that I'm like, I'm so over it. I can't do them anymore. And I do have one customer that every year he comes back to me the same time of year and he orders several from me, which I'm more than happy to do. But it's
Oh.
just funny how you get stuck on something. You're like, please don't ask me to do that again. I just like the variety of everything. And
Mhm.
I like the confidence that my customers have in me to make something new. The fact that they have the trust in me to look at my products and say, wow, she did this. I bet she can do that too. And there have only been 2 times where I've had to go to a customer and say, I'm sorry, I can't do this for you. And the first time, Andy was helping me with it, and we both were like, oh, we got this. It's in the bag. No problem. We can do this. It was a nightmare. It was horrible. And I felt so bad having to go back to the customer because it was a huge order. I had to refund her money because she put a deposit on it. And she was more than understanding. But for me, I just felt really bad that we couldn't do that. But
Mhm.
I love making all the different products. It's fun and exciting for me. It keeps things interesting. It's never boring for me. Yesterday, we spent the afternoon, 3 of my friends came over and helped me, and we put together 545 bottle openers. I think I'm good on bottle openers right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I had the time. So it's like, we're going to pump them out and try and get this taken care of. I just like variety of it and keeping things interesting. And I think it also keeps your customers interested as well, because you said you notice I'm always putting out something
Mhm.
new. So to me, if I'm a customer, I want to see the new stuff that you're putting out. And that's what I like about the people I follow on Instagram. They're always
Mhm.
doing something new, always doing something creative. It might be the same concept, it might be laser engraving, it might be woodworking, but there's so much variety that I think it helps with creativity as well.
Mhm.
So you're constantly trying to think of something new and different to do, and you don't just get stuck in a rut doing something. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with the niche businesses. I mean, people can be incredibly successful at that. But for me, I just like making new things all the time. And being the business owner, I have the luxury of doing that.
I love the multi-level shadow boxes that you do. Where did you get your inspiration for that? They are so cool.
So those files I do purchase on Etsy. I
Okay.
have not created my own yet. I've modified them a little bit to turn them into the lights so that they have the light feature, because a lot of them don't
Mm.
have that. But that started with a Christmas gift for Andy. I made him a little sign. It was the bow hunter's prayer. And I cut one of the 3D bears out and then I inset it into a piece of wood for him. And we were visiting friends up at the cabin, and they were showing us some renovations they had done in their bathroom. And they pointed out these little 3D lights. And they were like, yeah, we bought them on Amazon. We thought they were going to be a lot bigger. Should have read the detailed description a little bit more because it wasn't what we thought it was. And I said, you know what's really funny? I said, I have that file. I can make you a bigger one if you want. And they were like, oh, okay, that would be cool. So the husband reached out to me for a Valentine's Day gift and said, hey, can you please make my wife the bear sign?
Mhm.
And that got so much attention. I absolutely love how they look. They're so cool.
Yeah, they're cool.
It's just so neat, like assembling them and the texture and the colors. And then when the lights go on. So I have a fish one that I need to make for an upcoming show. And then I'm going to do some more of the bear. And I need to find some more files or start creating some of my own because they really are a neat piece and they're fun to make. I like making them.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about, I know you're a dog person. I'm a dog person. Joey just walked in the room. How do you incorporate Boomer into your business? He's in your logo, right?
Hmm.
Did you design your logo or did you have somebody design it?
I actually got that off of a free logo website.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just input the information for the business name and trying to incorporate Boomer in it. That's actually not my original logo. So my original logo was a paw print that was like paint splatter. And again, this is all pre-laser. So I wanted to get a brander for my logo. And my dad was like, oh, I'll help you with that. So he actually purchased the brander for me, which was really nice of him. And it was not cheap. But the problem was I had to redesign the logo because it wouldn't work with the paint splatter paw print. So I search for a free logo design and input the fact that I have a dog and he's part of the business and then the business name. And that's what came up as one of the options. And I thought, oh my God, that looks just like Boomer. So that's where the dog came from. And then, of course, Boomerrang Designs is named after Boomer. So when he was a puppy, my dad used to say, he just boomerangs around the house, which is really funny because for anybody who meets Boomer, he doesn't move real fast. So to say that he's boomerang around the house was kind of funny, but the name stuck. And that's how I ended up naming my business after him. I always call him my business partner. So
Yeah.
he used to always be in the shop with me. Unfortunately, he can't do stairs anymore. But when we lived at the old house, the shop was in the garage. And so he would come down and he'd lay there, of course, smack dab in the middle of everything. So you
Mm-hmm.
had to maneuver all around him. And even at the new house, when he could still do stairs, he would come downstairs, lay right in the pile of sawdust. And you're like, why? And it's
Yeah.
Velcro. So then there's the trail of sawdust throughout the house. You're like, okay, it is what it is. I don't know what else I could do.
I had JoJo and Onyx down in the basement with me in my sewing room. Yesterday, I was working on things for our craft show. And so terry cloth is like the fabric version of sawdust, I would say, because when you cut it, it's like people come over and they're like, what are these fuzzies everywhere? And I'm like, it's from the terry cloth and it just goes it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And Kevin said, look at Onyx because she's like almost all black and she just had these white like fuzzies all over. I was
Yes.
like,
Yep.
oh my word.
And they always seem to find the pile of it to lay in or wherever there's the most of it. And it's like, why? Why do you need to do that?
Right. If we had a contest to see who sheds more, Boomer or JoJo, who would it be?
Oh, Boomer, hands down. I
Yeah,
could build you
probably.
a Bernese Mountain Dog if you want. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's shedding season right now, which I'm sure JoJo's in the
Yeah,
middle of
Joey.
that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like tufts of it just flying everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. You have your online shop at Big Cartel,
Hmm.
and that's something I never heard of until I saw your shop. Tell me a little bit about that and how did you decide to go with that?
So, like most crafters, small business owners, Etsy was my first stop in starting an online website. And I think, like most crafters and small business owners, quickly came to realize that Etsy is not necessarily the best avenue for you. So
Hmm.
I found Etsy to be very frustrating to use because of the variety of products that I make. So you're an Etsy shop owner, you know how it works. When you create a new listing, you have to say what the product dimensions are in the box for shipping and the weight and all of that. Well, it became so tedious for me to have to figure out shipping options that I
Hmm.
just stopped putting things on my website. And I would post things on Instagram and Facebook. And finally, somebody said to me, it would be nice if you included like a link to purchase. And I thought, oh God, I don't want to go back to Etsy and have to put all this stuff on there,
Hmm.
especially when I had just gotten my new laser and the business was exploding. I was like, this is going to take me forever and I don't have the time to do it.
Right.
Plus, I also didn't like all the fees associated with Etsy. I felt like I was losing a lot of money on there. And I
Hmm.
also found it very frustrating at the end of the year when it came to taxes, trying to figure everything out there as well. I don't know why they can't just put it all in one giant spreadsheet for you, but it's in like 6 different locations and it drove me nuts. So I just stopped using Etsy and I was building my clientele offline. And I thought, well, I'm just going to do local sales. This just works better for me.
Hmm.
And then again, somebody mentioned about including a link in my Instagram and Facebook posts. So Andy has a friend who I've come to develop a relationship as well. I think more so from a small business standpoint. He owns Dark Side Vinyl, but I had reached out to him and I said, hey, do you know of any other websites or anything that you would recommend? Because he used to do a lot of online sales before his business grew and changed to what it is now. And he said, yeah, use this website called Big Cartel. He said,
Hmm.
it's great. You don't pay listing fees. You can use it on your phone. There's an app for it. And then you use Pirate Ship, and Pirate Ship connects right to Big Cartel. And then you can just ship from there. I thought, oh, okay, I'll go check it out. Oh my gosh, it was the best thing I ever did. I mean, you don't get the kind of traffic that you do on Etsy, but now before I post something on Instagram or Facebook, I just quickly upload my product to the website,
Hmm.
do my post on Facebook and Instagram, and copy the link. And I don't have to include box dimensions. I don't have to include the weight of the product. The only thing that I'm a little worried about, and I haven't really had anybody recently purchase and have it shipped, is because I sell so many different products. Again, it's hard to know what to charge for shipping because if somebody buys a sign and a bottle opener, the bottle opener is really not going to come into play as far as shipping's concerned because it weighs so little.
Right.
So trying to figure that all out has been a challenge, and it's definitely going to be a learning curve for me. I like the layout of Big Cartel better than Etsy. I was able to add my own pages to it. I love that I can use it on my phone. It's just so much more user friendly, I think, than Etsy. The other thing with Etsy was you had to input so much information to get a listing on your shop, and it took forever. I mean, it takes me 5 minutes max, if that, to do a listing now on Big Cartel. And I just think it's such a better option for me. I pay $20 a month. That's it. And I can list up to 500 products. So I started out paying $10 a month. And that was for, I think the max was 50 products, which I quickly realized I needed to upgrade from that.
Hmm.
And then there's the credit card fees, which you have on any site.
Right. You do.
So that's no big deal. And they use Stripe is what it's called. And so far, nobody said anything to me like, oh, the credit card isn't user friendly. I've had no complaints about the website, which is a good thing in my opinion. But for anybody looking to get outside of Etsy, I highly recommend Big Cartel. Yeah, I mean, $20 a month. I don't even know what I paid Etsy per month because, again, it's so confusing. Etsy was a good place to start, but this is definitely a better option. And who knows, I might outgrow the website later on too, but right now, $20 a month, I can't beat it.
How often do you do craft shows?
I don't really do craft shows.
Hmm.
And you and I spoke recently about more craft shows. I did my first craft show in 2020, and that was at Mountaintop Provisions. And it was free, which was awesome.
That's great.
And it was in October, and the weather was amazing, absolutely amazing. It was like 72 degrees in October. And they had like 500 plus people come out to this event, which they weren't prepared for. But, mid pandemic, everybody just wanted to get out and it was gorgeous. There were people that drove 3 hours to come up there for this
Wow.
show and the event and everything. It was amazing. So, being my first show, we sold out of a lot of stuff. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how much to bring. And then 2021, the next show I did was again Mountaintop, but it rained and
Mm.
poured all day. It was horrible. It was like 40 some degrees outside. It was just an absolute nightmare. And it was very unfortunate because we made all this extra product to take up with us, thinking we were going to blow it out of the water again. And then the weather was just horrible, which is a risky run with the outdoor craft
Hmm.
shows.
I remember talking to you about that because a lot of your product got damaged too and
Oh, yeah.
cracked,
Yep.
right?
Yep. I
Yeah.
lost about $300 worth of just product, not even income. And I'm still losing some of my cutting boards because they're still cracked. I find them every once in a while, they've cracked because they were out in the rain.
Oh.
So it was very frustrating. Lesson learned. I have very few regrets in life, but that is one of them, having done that show that year.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. And then we did the Conrad Weiser craft show, which I know you didn't do well this past year. You said it was frustrating where you were at, but
Yeah.
we blew it out of the water. I mean, we couldn't keep up throughout the day. So those are the only craft shows I've done. I do have one coming up in April, so I'm curious to see how that goes. And then Mountaintop might be doing one monthly over the summer. So depending on what they do, will determine if I do any of the other shows that you shared with me. But there's so much work, the craft shows, and it takes so much time and energy to build everything up. I'm always amazed how you do two craft shows at a weekend and multiple throughout the month. I'm like, how does this woman do this? Like, she's clearly Superwoman. I can't keep up.
I like doing two in a weekend because then everything's already in my car.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's like, all right, everything's loaded. I just bring my cash box in, from my
Yeah.
car and then just wake up first thing in the morning and drive to the other one. That's another thing I wanted to talk to you about is it's so weird how, like you said, we were at the exact same craft show. We both did totally opposite.
Yep.
I did horrible. I barely made my table feedback at that
Yep.
craft show. And they had changed the location and nobody was coming down our hallway. I know people that were there and they said, it's packed, it's packed. Well,
Oh
yeah, it
yeah.
was packed in the lobby and the other wing, but we heard people walking by and they said, did we come down here? Oh, yeah, we probably did. And they'd turn and walk back.
Hmm.
And actually, the guy that was set up next to me, he ended up leaving like 2 hours early because nobody was coming down our way. It was
That's such a shame.
yeah, it was crazy. And the year before where it was, I did amazing at that craft show. So I'm probably not going to do it this year because, like you said, it was a lot of work. And then if I'm in the same location, it was horrible for
Oh,
me.
that's such a shame. My friend Kelly, she does fused glass. And so her stand was right next to mine. And
Hmm.
we both decided to get two spaces. So we're going to be taking over pretty much a whole hallway
Nice.
because we just didn't have enough room
Yeah,
for all of our product. And then we did so well that now we know we should make more for next year. You know what I mean? That's such a bummer that it didn't work out
I
for you.
know.
I felt so bad when you told me that because I thought, oh my God, I
I
did
know.
so well. Like, it broke my heart for you.
I know. Sometimes it's just totally out of your control. They
Yeah.
stick you in a horrible location and that's all there is to it. So
Yep.
when you go to craft shows, how do you fit all your inventory? Do you have a trailer that you bring everything on, or does it all fit in your truck?
Yes, it all fits in the truck.
Wow.
Yeah. So it takes a couple vehicles to get it all there. When we go to the cabin, it took two trucks last time to take everything up. But doing the Conrad Weiser craft show, it all fit into one truck. The displays take up a lot of space,
Yeah.
because I use ladders and then I use pieces of wood to go across the ladder to
Hmm.
display the material on, and that takes up a lot of room. And then, of
Hmm.
course, the tables and everything.
Did you ever take Boomer to a craft show?
No, I have not. Which I thought about that. I think he would be a big attraction,
Hmm.
an emphasis on the big. Um, so I don't know. I thought about that for this one coming up in April. I don't know if pets are allowed. Unfortunately, even at Mountaintop, he can't be there because they don't allow dogs, even though it's outside. I would like to take him because I think that would be cool to say to people, here's my business partner, Boomer.
Hmm.
But he also doesn't do well in the heat. That's another concern is having him outside in the heat all day. I don't know. We'll see.
I find it interesting because some craft shows do let you take dogs, and I always thought the same thing. Like, it would be so cool to bring JoJo,
Yeah.
but you do worry about them out all day. And then,
Yep.
are they going to get bored? Now, Joey's pretty good. She'll just lay there. She's getting older, but, they still do get bored, and it's a
Yeah.
lot. It's overwhelming, I think.
Yes, it is. And if your booth gets filled with people, then too, you got to worry about the dog. And
Hmm.
some people don't know about boundaries with
Right.
dogs. And,
Right.
so all those things to take into consideration.
You do a lot of your social media on Instagram. We've talked a little bit about Instagram. Do you post every day or do you have a schedule of how you post things?
I don't have a schedule, but if I do a bulk order of something, or if I'm working on one specific product and I'm making a bunch of different items from that, like the cutting boards,
Hmm.
I will take all the photos and then once a day I'll post and I try to spread it out.
Hmm.
I probably should get better at posting on a regular basis. And I'm not real good with like reels and stories. I worry about the criticism also on
Mm.
Instagram because a lot of people that I follow who are in similar businesses, they'll comment and say, well, I got a nasty comment from someone today. And it's like, I don't need that negative energy. So
Right.
it just kind of makes me a little bit nervous to post something, especially if I'm working on something or if I'm using a tool, because people just, they're not always the nicest. And
Yeah.
I worry about that, but I'm also not tech savvy enough to make reels. Like you post some really awesome videos on TikTok. And I'm like, I need to figure out how to do that. But that also takes time. Like you
Mm-hmm.
have to set aside the time to learn how to do that and then to edit it. I heard you talking, I think it was during your first podcast, you were talking about how much time it takes
Mm-hmm.
to make a 30-second reel or a 60-second reel. And I'm just like, I don't know if that's worth the time,
Right.
but I think it is. I try to every once in a while. TikTok has made things a little bit easier to post
Mm-hmm.
videos. I find that a little bit more user friendly than Instagram sometimes. And it's also reaching different people. But yeah, I don't have a schedule or anything as far as, social media is concerned.
That's interesting that you brought that up about the negative comments because I did want to talk to you about that. I follow a few women who do like woodworking on social media, and they talk about some of the comments that they
Mm-hmm.
receive, the negative comments, and like the mansplaining and just stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. And I just wanted to ask you, have you ever experienced that? It sounds like you have a really great support system, but
Mm-hmm.
have you ever experienced that, like people making negative comments or not believing that you made the items or anything like that?
I haven't really experienced anything too negative, but I'm also very cautious about what I post for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times when these women that I follow on Instagram, the things that they post, for example, I saw a woman, she redid her floors and she just put the tile over top of the existing tile. And she had commented in a later slide that somebody had reached out to her and told her, what a horrible homeowner she is for doing that because whoever buys a home after her is now going to have to deal with her laziness that she did it this way. And she's like, first of all, I needed to raise the floor up. This tile is intended to be put on top of other tile. Like it's not, it's a quick and cheap fix and it's not hard to remove.
Mm-hmm.
But I just feel like that negative energy is not necessary and it doesn't help you in any way.
Right.
It's not like it's constructive criticism. I mean, I welcome the constructive criticism, but
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that I don't need. I've not experienced anything directly, but there are times that I go to Lowe's or Home Depot and I'll be getting wood and a man will come up to me and he's like, "Do you need help?"
Mm-hmm.
Nope, nope, I got it. I'm good. Like I don't no, I don't need help. And there will be other men nearby getting wood and they don't go over and ask them if they need help. They just come to
Right.
me. You know what I
Right.
mean? And there have been times where somebody's reached out and said, "Hey, can Andy do this for me?" And I'll be like, "You do know I make that, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not Andy doesn't do it." And Andy is the first person to tell anybody that it's me who does the work. I mean, he
Yeah.
helps and we're bringing him into the business. We're trying to get into live edge and making our own cutting boards and stuff, which that's a much longer process because of drying the wood and stuff. He's the first one that'll say, "No, it's all Nicole. It's Nicole's business. Like I help her. She's the one that
Mm.
does everything." It is unfortunate that people still make those negative comments or they make the assumption that your husband's doing all the work.
Well, I've experienced that even with this podcast.
Really?
Yes, when I tell people that I do a podcast, I've had a few people say to me, "Oh, does your husband help you with it?" And I'm like, "What?" And sometimes even from women, and they'll say like, "Oh, well,
Oh,
who's
yeah.
helping you edit that?" And it's like, "Me." It's a whole podcast about how women can do anything, and you're
Yes.
asking me
Yes.
who's helping me. Me.
It blows my mind. My friend, she posted something on Facebook the other day in her stories, and I forget who the quote was by, but the quote was, "There's a special place in hell reserved for women who don't support other women."
Mm,
And it's amazing how many women
yeah.
do still say, "Why are you doing that? Your husband should do that."
Yeah.
It just boggles my mind. And there's times that Andy comes to me and he's like, "Hey, you're better at this than I am. Can you
Mhm.
do this?" Or if he's working on a piece of wood and he's polyurethaning it, he'll come to me and he's like, "Hey, can you look at this? You've got a much better eye for this stuff than I do." Or "You've done
Mhm.
this before, I haven't." But I go to him and I say, "Hey, can you help me learn how to use this tool? Like I've never used
Yes.
this one before. I know you have." So we're a team, but it's amazing how many people just automatically assume that
Mhm.
he does all of this stuff for me. I would have never even thought with a podcast. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
It never occurred to me either because I love computers and I love gadgets. I've had a YouTube channel for a really long time and video editing. So
Yeah.
it was just definitely strange to hear people say that to
Wow.
me that, "Oh, is Kevin helping you?" And I'm just like, Kevin asked me to help him with the YouTube channel one time. Like, what? I think he wanted to start a softball YouTube channel for a little bit
Oh,
there.
okay.
And about the negative comments online, my YouTube videos are silly, right? They teach you something, but it's nonsense. And
Right.
half the
Okay.
reason I do it is because it makes me laugh. If you laugh too, that's just a bonus.
Right.
If you don't laugh, I really don't care. I make myself laugh, but it's trying to teach you to sew at the same time. This woman, my first hate comment was on a video where I was making all that stuff to send to Australia
Okay.
to help the animals in the wildfire. And
Oh,
she
yeah.
left me the most horrible comment. And then she went on other videos and other social media, and I found her, and she was just bashing me. I had a full blown panic attack.
Oh
Like,
my God.
I was crying. And then Kevin's like, you gotta realize you're gonna get people like this. It's a miserable human. And after a while, I was just like, okay, like I don't choose to spend my time going on people's videos and just leaving the most horrible comments you've ever heard.
Well, if you don't like
It's
it, you don't have to
move on.
comment. Like, what?
Right.
Yeah, just move on. What's the
Right.
big deal? I mean,
It's so
and
weird.
doing what we do, it's so hard, and you put your heart and soul into it. I
Hmm.
mean, if I have a customer reach out to me and they have a problem with a product, it's like, oh my God, your heart just breaks
Right.
because you put so much time and energy and thought into it.
Hmm.
And I'm sure you remember every piece that you've made,
Yeah.
and it's a part of you. And it's important that when it goes out into the world, when it's out in the wild on its own, that it's a good product. So
Absolutely.
yeah, the negative comments, it's unfortunate because it shouldn't hold me back, but
Hmm.
it does. And I'm sure some tools I don't use the way they should be used. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? But it works for me, and I don't need somebody telling me, oh, you're doing it wrong. You don't know what you're doing. Get your
Hmm.
husband to do it. I don't need that. So,
One thing I will share with you if you ever do want to get more into TikTok and stuff is there is a way to filter comments ahead of
oh, okay.
time.
Okay.
So you can put in certain words or phrases, and then TikTok will actually flag those comments immediately. So if
Huh.
somebody would go and leave you like, I don't know, get your husband to do that or something, like you
Right,
could
right.
probably put that or like husband or something in the filter and it will flag that. Now you will still read that comment, but it won't post it on your
Oh,
public
that's
thing
nice.
unless you approve it. Yeah.
That's a
So
really nice feature.
yeah. So that might be
Wow.
something to consider. I mean, you'll still get it and read it and it will still hurt, but it won't be out there for the
Right.
world. But yeah, people are just miserable and I'm
Yeah, it's just
trying to do the
unfortunate.
opposite on this podcast.
Right,
Trying
right,
to just be.
exactly. Yes.
Do you have any apps that help you as a small business? Like, do you have any apps that help you schedule Instagram posts or anything like that?
No, not really. So the website that I use for my business has an app, and
Mm,
then I use Square when we do
mhm.
craft shows to run credit cards. But outside of that, no, I don't have anything.
Okay.
I was looking for a long time trying to figure out how to manage orders because I still write all my orders down by hand, but I didn't really find anything. And that's kind of what led me to my website in talking with my friend because I was trying to figure out a better way to manage orders. Because the problem would be we'd be out camping or at the cabin or out to dinner, and somebody would message me, and then I'd have to put a reminder on my phone when I get home, write this order down. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Which I'm fine with people reaching out to me whenever, but I was kind of hoping to find something that I could track it a little bit better. And I do have the ability to go into my website and input an order, but it's not exactly what I wanted it to be.
Okay.
So I'm still on the hunt for an app that might allow me to track the custom orders that come in off the website.
Mhm. Do you use Square Invoicing at all? If somebody would text you about an order, do you put it together on Square or do you put it together on something else?
So I really don't get a lot of invoice needs. So
Okay.
I have one customer that he comes to me every year, and the beer caddy customer.
Mhm.
And I invoiced him because it's for a company. And then I just started working with a mortgage lender
Hmm.
for closing gifts. So she has requested invoices on a monthly basis. So she'll be getting them, but she doesn't want it through Square because she wants to pay by check. So I'll just
Okay.
create like an Excel invoice and I'll email that to her. But most of my customers pay me either through the website, Venmo, PayPal, or cash. And
Okay.
then I actually have a pickup system at my house. So if
Oh,
people don't want to pay for shipping, they can come and pick up orders at the house any time of the day. And I started that during the pandemic.
hmm
So I have a bin on the front porch for people to pick up in. And when the pandemic was at its height, I would wipe down after every single order when somebody would come and pick up. And we just installed a money box as well, so people can drop cash securely into a money box that's hidden and everything. And it works well because a lot of people don't want to pay for shipping. So if they're local, they just swing by and grab the order. And we've had people stop by at like 10 o'clock at night. It's no big deal. I mean, people say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I haven't come for my order yet." Well, no sweat off my back. Like,
yeah.
just come whenever you want. That's why the pickup box is there. So it's worked really well for us to have people just swing by and do that. But yeah, invoicing, I don't really have to do all that often. I have used Square for
hmm
that, but it's just not come into play really with a lot of my orders.
I know I used the pickup box when I ordered JoJo's little
Yeah.
paw print.
Yep.
That
Yep.
that did work really well.
Yep. Yep.
What are your plans for the rest of the year? How do you see your business expanding?
Last year, Andy and I invested in the laser,
Mhm.
which was a significant investment for us. And then this year, we invested in a sawmill. Early January, we purchased a 16-foot sawmill. It's a trailer, it's a 16-foot trailer. And the sawmill is attached to it, and it can cut up to 22-inch wide logs. So previously, Andy was using what they call an Alaskan sawmill,
Mhm.
and it's just using a chainsaw. So there's a device that attaches to the chainsaw, and there's a lot of measurements involved, very labor intensive. And so he would cut live edge slabs using the chainsaw. And so he had been talking about wanting to get a sawmill for quite some time, and he finally came across a really good deal. It came in a crate, just like the laser did,
Mhm.
and he spent probably a month or so, I want to say, assembling it in the garage. And it's finally up and running, and he keeps it over at the hunting property. He's in the process of cutting wood. Now, with live edge stuff, it takes 1 to 2 years for the wood to dry.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's definitely an investment up front, and he's working to build our inventory so that, in a year or two, we can have product to start selling. And we do have some pieces now that are probably at the point that if we need to use them, we can. You've probably seen some of our black walnut tables that we do, the rounds, they're called cookies. We have some cedar pieces that we want to do. Those things are massive and they've been drying for a long time. Hopefully, we'll have a solid inventory built up, and then Andy can just keep adding to it,
Mhm.
over the years, and it'll just continue to dry. But that's where we're headed this year. That's the big investment for the business this year and the focus. And then I actually have an attachment for the laser. It's called a rotary attachment, where I can engrave tumblers and insulated mugs and glasses and all that. I just haven't had the chance to try and hook it up and learn how to do that. So that's something that I want to add into the business as well
Nice.
for the year.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for anybody wanting to start out in woodworking?
I learned a lot from my dad. My
Mhm.
dad is the one who taught me everything that I know about woodworking, and I still feel I'm very beginner level when it comes to that stuff because the world of woodworking is so vast, and
Mhm.
there's so many talented woodworkers out there that it just amazes me what some of them can do. My advice would be, don't be afraid, because especially as a woman, we're not raised up to use tools. My mom raised me and my sister to be very independent, strong-willed women, but I never used a drill until I bought my house. And it can be intimidating because they're dangerous. And I think the important thing is just don't be afraid, but respect the tool
Mhm.
and know that it can bite back. It can be a little scary and intimidating, but There's so many videos out there that if you don't have somebody to help teach you, there's so many other ways that you can learn how to do it and start out with basic projects, just something very simple. I mean, the beer caddies that I made, such simple cuts and such a simple design. It may not look like it, but it really is at the beginner level project. So I think that's the biggest thing. Just don't be afraid. If it's something you really want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite quotes is, if you're not scared, it's really worth doing. You know, you have to be a little scared to make it worthwhile. It can be intimidating, but it's worth it. And for me, as I said earlier on, having that final product at the end of the day is just so satisfying. And I'm sure you feel the same way with your items.
Yeah.
It's just like, wow, I made that. I did that. That's so awesome.
Yeah. Have you ever had an injury or anything?
I have not.
Mm-hmm.
Andy has. I have had wood kick back on me using the saw, which is scary, or you can hit something in the wood, or using the miter saw, you may not have the blade up all the way and you hit the power button and it kicks the wood. So that can be a little scary at times. Thankfully, I've had no incidents, I should say, with the table saw, because that's probably one of the most dangerous tools that people use. I know when we bought the table saw, even years after me working with power tools, my dad was like, just be careful, please. Just be careful. And I'm like, Dad, it's okay. Like, Andy will teach me, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
And the table saw is probably one of my favorite tools to use, but they are very dangerous. And some of the Facebook groups that we're in, we see people post that they've been doing woodworking for 40 years and they just lost a finger. Stuff happens. I will say, I had a piece of wood, I was trying to run it through the planer and it exploded on me. And that scared the living daylights out of me when that happened, because I had never seen it happen before. And it was just me. I was running the planer all by myself. I don't even know if Andy was home. And the wood just went everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, oh my God. And I just, I jumped back and I was like, oh dear Lord, what the heck just happened? Because I didn't know what I did wrong. Like, I didn't know what the issue was. And I don't even know if Andy knows what was wrong after the fact, but it is scary in the moment. So I just bought us leather aprons to use when we're running the planer, because wood can explode in it and it can shoot back at you.
Okay.
And, it can injure you.
I know I've had needles break on my sewing machine, and it's the same thing. It's like, it's so scary because where did that little piece go? And you're like, oh, you just see it like ping, fly in, and it makes the loudest noise and your machine locks up. So,
oh, yeah. Got to respect the tools.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Well, time is almost up, and I always like to end the podcast with a random fact. So do you have your random fact for me?
Yes, I do. So I had to research this because I was a little nervous about this question. The CO2 laser that I use is one of the earliest gas lasers to be developed. And it was invented in 1964 at Bell Labs. And it is still one of the most useful types of lasers. Has the highest power continuous wave lasers currently available. So I didn't know that. I know there's fiber lasers and diode lasers, but the CO2 lasers apparently are the most popular ones, and they have the most wide range of uses, I guess you could say.
Wow. Well, that's all the time we have for today. So thank you so much, Nicole, for spending your morning with me and chatting.
Thank you very much for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll be talking and seeing each other at shows and seeing each other around.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you so much for listening to the Handmade with Heart podcast. You can find Nicole on social media at Boomerrang Designs, and you can find me at Scrappy Stitch or the Handmade with Heart podcast. We'll see you soon.